In the pantheon of video game archetypes, there are short games, and then there are short games. For an example of the former, let's take a quick look at Star Fox 64, one of my personal favorites. The primary mode of the game is digestible in about 2 hours, which would be blowing up sensationalist game news headlines everywhere if it came out today, but there was more to it than that. There were multiple different paths you could take through the world map, and it took time and repetition to work out how exactly to unlock more difficult levels by triggering certain events. Because the feedback loop of completing this game and starting over again was so quick, there was a level of addictiveness in playing up to a point where you knew you were going to find a new level, and then starting the whole game over if you failed, just to see what flying through every stone arch on a particular map might do. There are a number of short games out there that, in spite or because of their length, are not only worth their value, but worth your small time investment. So I asked a handful of the GameSpot staff for their favorites in this category to gain some insight on how a game can overcome its diminutive size to deliver a big experience.
I fucking love Journey. Other than being absolutely beautiful, Journey said a lot by doing very little. I wouldn't call it minimalistic, but it had a very short, very to the point storyline, I guess you could call it, and it conveyed a lot of feeling through pictures on walls and through collecting the cloth and stuff like that. And I think it made you feel a lot of things by giving you just enough that you were able to interpret on your own. And I think an experience like that wouldn't have worked if it was like a 8, 10, 12-hour experience, which is why I love that Journey's 2 hours. You have this very small, very contained, very powerful narrative in this little 2-3 hour frame, depending on how long you want to spend in it. So I think it's the perfect size to be as powerful as it is.
Well done, Android. The Enrichment Center once again reminds you that Android Hell is a real place where you will be sent at the first sign of defiance.
Portal's length really adds to the enjoyment of the game itself. Like, I remember when it first came out, and some of my friends played it before me, and it was kind of a contest within us to see how quickly each person could beat it. Like, they told me this game takes about 2 or 3 hours, and in a way that was like a challenge. Like, my first experience with Portal was, I know that these are puzzles that I want to get through, and I've heard it has an interesting story, but like, I just want to see, can I get through this in like 2 or 3 hours? But in those 2 to 3 hours, like, even though it is about like solving puzzles and in gameplay that isn't necessarily focused on a narrative, the narrative that they build around it is just like so rich because it's so tight, because it just cuts out all of the fat. Of course, there are games that are wonderful because they do take so much time, because you're looking for resources and you're grinding through quests and you're spending a lot of time being immersed in that world. Portal's really good because it is just such a quick experience, and because it's so short, you can go through it multiple times. Like, I think I played through the original Portal 3 or 4 times because it was short, because eventually I could get through it in about an hour, and I just loved like looking for new little things that they put in the game that I didn't notice before, and like that length actually adds to Portal a lot.
The effects of prolonged exposure to the button are not part of this test.
So if you've ever had that really good feeling when you pick up a book and it's thick and it looks like it's going to be this big novel, and you open it up and the font's really huge, and then you can breeze through the chapters, it's kind of like the way The Vanishing of Ethan Carter makes me feel. It looks like it's going to be this massive, substantial game, but it's broken out into these really easy to digest chapters. It starts you out in the very beginning where you actually feel like there's something going on in this world, that your life is in danger. It makes you really want to investigate further. And then all of a sudden you're investigating crimes. And each of these crimes are actually pretty short to uncover. And figuring out how the scene played out is such a great feeling. It makes you feel incredibly smart when you finish it. And so these are small chunks of the game that you can piece out in 20 minutes or so. You can actually beat the entire game easily in one sitting. It's witty, it's surprising, and because the game is so short, once it does that about 10 or so times, you actually have completed the game, and that's why the game is just so good in the length that it is. It doesn't need to be longer. It's perfect just the way it was, and it was a great way to spend one evening.
I've learned 2 things in my life. No place is truly quiet, and nowhere is really ordinary.
So, Metal Gear Ground Zeroes, right? This is a game that everyone criticized for being only 5 minutes long because it was reported that a member on the dev team was able to speedrun the whole game in 5 minutes. Well, that turned out not to be true, right? There was one mission that he was really good at playing, and he got through that pretty fast. That said, the game isn't that long. It's a pretty short game, but what it does have going for it is the sort of open-ended nature of it, and what that lends to is replayability. And while that's not always something that is worth praising a game for, the great part about Metal Gear Solid Ground Zeroes is the fact that you can approach the 5 missions in the game in so many different ways. And if you're someone who likes stealth and who likes the Metal Gear series, you sort of get to, it's like a sample platter of what to expect in the Phantom Pain. So on the one hand, you have this great stealth experience that's varied, and yes, it's in one location, but the time of day changes, the missions change, the guards change, the variables get mixed up. On the other hand, if you're a Metal Gear Solid fan, it's a great little taste of what's to come. Do I think that the price helps justify its length? Yes, but at the same time, Ground Zeroes is something that I would appreciate, even at the $60 price tag, because I like stealth games. I mean, there's so many ways to sort of play that game, and for me, yes, it was a short experience, but it was also a great experience.
Kept you waiting, huh?
I'm going to champion one particular short game because that's what I was asked to do, and that game is Vanquish. It's not really like anything else. It takes third-person shooting, but then it infuses that shooting with kind of that Platinum Games action game style that you see in Bayonetta and games like that. And so you've really got what amounts to be an action game with a lot of motion and fluidity, in which you happen to be shooting instead of using swords to slash enemies up. And it's awesome with this great AI, and it's also really high energy all the time. I don't think that being longer would have necessarily served Vanquish well. I would rather play Vanquish again and again and again than play, say, Lightning Returns once.